we may have a choice of fresh fruits and vegetables and those types of foods, but there also may be really appropriate frozen foods that we can use to add to meals and snacks. Going to make that schedule easier to keep and put a nice variety into it, but it just takes some thought process and some label reading.
USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, has issued a reminder about handling frozen foods safely as students, parents, and caretakers adjust to a physical return to classrooms this fall. According to USDA, when it comes to packing lunches, preparing after-school snacks, or quick and convenient dinners between after-school activities, frozen foods are a popular option. However, there are food safety concerns to be aware of. On today's Sound Living, safely preparing frozen foods. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. In a recent USDA study, 76% of study participants said they would buy not ready-to-eat frozen chicken products for their children to prepare at home. K-State Research and Extension Nutrition Specialist Sandy Procter says that checking the product instructions on the package is the first step in safely preparing frozen foods. Sandy, we talk a lot about after-school snacks for children, and one of the things that I never really even considered is the fact that some of the snacks involve the microwave, they involve being frozen, and that is something the USDA is kind of reminding people that there are some safety measures to take.
You know, we think oftentimes that frozen food is just, heat and eat, and heat may mean more than just thaw out. And I think that's the message really that's come out, this back-to-school sort of USDA reminder about the safety and the convenience, but some proper steps to take with frozen foods.
I guess the first one is just checking the package to see how it's supposed to be nuked, as we say.
And nuke may be part of it. Some of them actually say, this is a raw product. Cook in this way, do not microwave. And so checking that label is extremely important, and reading the instructions, because manufacturers do not have to inform us when they change something in their instructions. Read them every time. If you make this product over and over, take a glance. Make sure that the recommended treatment, the recommended process, and those endpoint temperatures are still the same as you're remembering.
You were mentioning some of the things they put on the package. I think there's like cook and serve, ready to cook, oven ready. So we need to know what all of that means.
And I take this as a personal recommendation for even those of us who think, oh, we got this down pat. And that is, let's say you're making a salad, a pasta salad, and you've cooked the pasta, and one of the ingredients is corn. And frozen corn makes a really nice ingredient in a pasta salad. It says right on that frozen corn, this is not a cooked product. Cook and then eat. And so that means be sure that you cook that corn, chill it, and add it to your salad. You don't have to cook it a lot. You have to bring it to temperature because those foods are packaged with that intention. It's like cookie dough. It is edible, but it is not safe always. And they recommend the same thing with vegetables. And so if it says on the package, cook, it really is recommended to do so to be completely safe.
We also have to know just exactly how powerful our microwaves are too, don't we? Because they do vary, and it will say that this may vary as to how long it needs to be cooked.
And a perfect example of that is when you cook your popcorn. It may be a whole minute different than what it says on the package label. And they always say, don't use the popcorn button. Well, think about that with the reheat. Maybe your microwave has that sensor that can tell you when it's actually hot. But a good old food thermometer is going to tell you when your leftovers are reheated to 165 or your products have that endpoint temperature that is recommended on the label.
Boy, and we all know if you go just a little bit too long with that popcorn, it's going to be real burnt, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess from food safety, then we know it's safe, but food quality, it's gone past its prime. So, yes, there is a connection between the two. And following those instructions and paying attention to your product in the microwave or on the stove, of course, makes perfect sense.
You bring up a good point. The doneness is one thing, but maintaining the food quality is another. And if we overcook something in a microwave, it can be rubbery. It can be just almost inedible.
Well, and it's the way it is on the grill. Some people say, I like my burger juicy. I don't want to use a food thermometer. And while this doesn't have necessarily to do with frozen food reheating, we know that if you cook your food to an endpoint temperature, let's say you're making a hamburger patty, it should be cooked to 160. And if you're using a food stem thermometer, you may find your burger is done sooner than you would if you were just gauging its doneness. And so your quality might be better, might have a little bit more juice to it, might have a little more flavor to it than if you're just eyeballing it. So that's a whole different lesson around food safety, but using extra care, extra steps does not mean that the flavor or the quality is going to be diminished. In fact, oftentimes it's the opposite.
And I guess we always start with the wash your hands and wash the surface.
We do, but that's still the number one thing that we can do. Food that comes frozen is safe, but those hands and cook surfaces are there to contaminate that food as soon as that package is opened. And so it really does matter to start with clean hands, clean work surfaces. And another thing that's really important is that microwave. Make sure it is clean. You can't assume that just because you don't see anything that it's safe. If the last thing you used it for was to thaw out something, there could be all sorts of, like chicken juice in there that has dried and really is an unsanitary surface. So wipe it out with a sanitary wipe after you're defrosting especially. Think of meat drips or food splatters to prevent that bacteria growth. And if you do it after every use, then it is sitting there not growing bacteria and ready for your next use.
And I think we all know it's nice for the next person that has to use it if you clean up after yourself, because as you mentioned, the splatters really do happen and sometimes you can't see them.
That's right. And there are so many crevices inside of a microwave. It's a really tough to clean surface. And so just routinely learning to wipe it out and not giving it that eyeball treatment is probably a really good food safety factor.
When you were talking about washing hands, I was thinking about several different songs. Do you have a favorite song that you sing, or do you just now know what 20 seconds is?
Well, every once in a while I still just sing it because we teach kids, singing the ABCs or Happy Birthday 2 times through or whatever it is. But having been in my background in healthcare, by the time you go and do the process and the backs of hands and making sure that you're reaching to the wrists and making sure that you clean around your nails and, that you're washing and rinsing thoroughly, chances are it's going to be 20 seconds. I remember working when I first started in food service here at the university, one of my employees from the salad area was looking right over the hand washing sink, and she looks at me washing my hands and she goes, "You have a background in healthcare, don't you?" And I hadn't realized that you would be able to tell that by the way I washed my hands, but I guess it was a good thing to be recognized for. So really, 20 seconds goes by quickly, but a song can't hurt if it helps you make sure the process is thorough.
One of the things we're trying to do in terms of food safety is staying out of that danger zone.
You're right. Learning about that danger zone is probably one of the 2 keys that we can really count on if we think nothing else about food safety, and washing our hands and then holding and keeping food out of the danger zone. And that is 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And when it's in that danger zone, think clock. It needs to not be in there more than 2 hours total. So if you put food out on your table and you're serving it, the clock is ticking. So if it sits out on a buffet and it's had a lot of exposure and it's been over 2 hours, then it's time to get rid of that food rather than refrigerate it and use it later. And another thing that is important to remember is that if it's really hot, like it's out on a picnic, that 2-hour time shortens. If the air temperature is up in the 80s and 90s, then that 2-hour time span of food safety shortens considerably.
I think about that on football weekends early in the season when it can be 90, 95 degrees and people are tailgating. That is certainly very possible to hit the danger zone.
That's right. And it's the rule changes to 1 hour if the temperature is over 90 degrees. And so it really shortens that safety period because time and temperature are the 2 components that make food safe.
When we're looking at the frozen food and things that young people may be doing after school, what are some safety precautions when you're using a microwave? Because I know that stuff comes out piping hot sometimes.
Well, I think that's a really good rule of thumb is use oven mitts or use a microwave-safe plate and equipment to heat things with. And this may not have to do necessarily with safety, but I would recommend it. Use a sheet of wax paper or a piece of covering over that. Even another plate can work over that plate that you're heating to keep it from splattering, first of all, which will make cleanup easier. But it also keeps it safer for you when you're trying to pick up that cool surface. If it has hot food on it, then it's maybe not going to be near as cool as it might be if it hadn't splattered. So thinking that food or containers may be hot, you may need that pot holder. And oftentimes microwaves are at a level where we can really burn ourselves if we pull food out and it's too hot to hang on to.
Is that another thing when we really should look at the label? And if it says let cool for 1 minute or 2 minutes, we probably ought to let it cool for 1 or 2 minutes?
Well, for a lot of reasons. Definitely because it's going to be easier to handle and safer to taste. But also, that quality we're looking for may happen after that minute where the food has a chance to set up or thicken, or the heat actually permeates. You know, when we're heating up food or we're cooking something like a steak, the temperature for food safety says it goes to 165 for poultry. Steak and pork is at 145, and that's after it rests for 3 minutes. And part of that is to let that heat get to the center and to actually settle so that it is a consistent heat throughout. And so for quality's sake, as well as food safety, we want to make sure that we give that food a chance to rest, and especially if it says that on the directions.
Steam can be another problem because a lot of the bags, you mentioned the popcorn, that's one of those that as you open it, you feel the heat come pouring out. So maybe don't get your face too close.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And you know, those popcorn bags has that in really large letters, you know, this side up and be careful. And when you open it, those corners, that steam is vented out. That's how popcorn pops. And that's a really painful life lesson to learn if you can get some very serious burns from steam. So absolutely, food safety and cooking safety are part of independence and training that kids of the right age need to go through. But, you know, have a certain reverence around all cooking equipment, even a microwave.
I know a lot of kids are going to say, Mom, I know how to use the microwave. Dad, I know how to use the microwave. We really need to make sure they know how to use the microwave. Maybe watch them do it a few times. Let them try it on their own.
I think so. And reminding them that cleaning up afterwards is a part of the process and that it should be clean. And if they happen to find it not clean, that's really important to clean it and then do it. And to cover their food, maybe stop it part way, give it a stir if it's something like that. So again, that it heats thoroughly and we don't have that problem with cold spots that can be unsafe if we don't do it properly.
Some of the things we've been talking about are prepackaged frozen foods, and while they might be convenient, we should also keep in mind that they can sometimes be high in calories, they can be high in fat, so maybe that's not an everyday after-school snack.
Well, it really does depend on the food. We can find really almost anything pre-prepared and ready to go, and some of those make super snacks. It just depends on not only the ingredient label and the preparation label, but also look at that nutrition facts label and make sure that is something that you want to include sometimes, but not on a regular basis. We have a lot of foods we like to prepackage, so this may be something that we can also work into our meal plan, as you call it, our snack plan. I think it's good to have a plan for snacks and to know that they're going to happen. And for growing kids particularly, they're important. And we can make those choices healthy choices so that they add to the wide variety of healthy foods that we have through the day. And so to prepare for those snacks, we may have a choice of fresh fruits and vegetables and those types of foods, but there also may be really appropriate frozen foods that we can use to add to meals and snacks. Going to make that schedule easier to keep and put a nice variety into it, but it just takes some thought process and some label reading. And one thing that I think is really important to remember, there may be food recalls. Foodsafety.gov lists every place that might have that frozen food recall list. And I know Karen Blakesley with Food Safety Extension oftentimes alerts the public to some of those food recalls, but they're available to all of us at foodsafety.gov. And so you might want to check and see if the product that you have or that you just bought is on that recall list, and to just be aware, because if that happens, return it to the store for a refund or close it up so that no animal or human can get into it, and make sure that it's thrown away safely. That's K-State Research and Extension Nutrition Specialist Sandy Procter. To learn more about safely preparing frozen foods and nutrition programs offered by Extension, contact your local Extension office or visit ksre.ksu.edu. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.